Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and with me, as always, is my co-host Danny Gillette of the HuskerBigRed.com. And we're here on Monday morning. We're a few days away from the Nebraska football spring game. There was another scrimmage this past weekend, so we'll talk about that, a bunch of recruiting news, and everything else about the Huskers. So, Danny, it's a few days away until we are seeing this team on the field. How are you doing this Monday morning?
Well, it's nice and rainy here, so I kind of wish I was back in bed, but the only way I would get out of bed on a day like today is to talk some Nebraska football. So, I'm excited. 5 days away. I mean, is it me or does this offseason seem to have gone fast?
Yeah, it has gone pretty fast. There's been a lot of news, and of course, it's been fun, watching Matt Rule and, this new coaching staff work. It's one more week now of spring practices. So it's been, a good spring, I think, for Nebraska. We've learned a lot. Obviously, the transfer portal window opened on Saturday. Alonte Brown, went in there. We had a post up about that. I think some more guys are going to be going into the transfer portal here after this next week or so. So buckle up in terms of that. I'm
And
hoping.
don't be too worried if they go in. Don't be too worried if they go in. Don't freak out. I mean, we have a lot of bodies at several positions, and guys probably want playing time. It's not a sky is falling type of thing. So for those who worry, don't worry. We'll be fine. I mean, I already saw a couple of worries about Alante, but we'll be good. That's all I had to say because I know fans like to worry sometimes.
Yeah, it's just you just have to get used to it. I mean, Texas had like five former four-star recruits, in the transfer portal on Saturday. So it's just the way it is. I mean, Nebraska's got way over the scholarship limit right now in terms
Yep.
of players. So they are going to have to cut about 20 or 30 guys. It'll be interesting to see, how that works. But I think you can look at the depth chart and, see, I mean, I can see, a few potential departures at the quarterback position, depending how things go. And I mean, who knows? I mean, I've seen this before, but even 24/7 Sports, when they talked about quarterbacks that could be in the portal, they had Casey Thompson's name on that list. So I don't know. What do you think that Casey Thompson's going to be here in the fall, or do you think that Jeff Sims is going to, kind of lock this down and Casey's going to take his talents elsewhere?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I've always said, and I said this back in December, that Jeff Sims is probably a little bit of a better fit for this offense. And if Sims is that much better than Thompson, or Thompson doesn't see a fit, then I could see Casey entering the portal. I mean, he's still got, some mileage left on him, even with the shoulder surgery. So I could see him going into the portal. I mean, if Sims is that much better, and if he fits more of what the, you know, the offensive coordinator Satterfield wants to do, then I could see it because we tried, what's that saying, fitting a square peg into a round hole with Mark Whipple last year, and that didn't work. And Casey's already had to deal with that. So if he doesn't see a fit here this year, then I don't blame him for entering the transfer portal at all. We'll have to see, but it's definitely one of the more interesting storylines, and I don't think it was written up just for clicks. I could definitely see a situation where this actually happens.
Yeah, because it's interesting, if Casey goes into this season, I mean, I know he doesn't want to spend his last year as the backup. I'm not, I don't think he's afraid of the competition per se, but I obviously we haven't got the chance to see Jeff Sims, but he's been pretty impressive from everything that we've gathered. He does need to work on, the turnovers. I think there was maybe a fumble, he had during his scrimmage the other day, but that was a little bit of an issue with him at Georgia Tech. But I mean, Casey hasn't been the most, great at protecting the ball either during his kind of career. Both of them kind of have a tendency to throw interceptions. So I do, worry about that with Jeff Sims. But it sounds like just the physical talents. He's got so much, kind of more ability and running ability. And I think the one thing at the quarterback position that everybody can agree on is that Heinrich Harburg has definitely made a move, up the quarterback depth chart. And I think he's looking to be number two right now. And I know Casey Thompson's not in the mix, but it would be great for him to get some more reps too going forward. I mean, if Casey's not going to be here playing, and Heinrich really is taking that step forward, then it might be a good thing long term for Nebraska if Thompson's not around and he can get those extra reps, this fall too, and maybe even some playing time on the field, certain packages and stuff for him because he looks like a hell of an athlete.
Yeah, he definitely has the wheels, and it's interesting. It's one of those cases we talked about Fred Hoiberg and his kind of not utilizing his talent on the bench well. Well, I think that might have happened with Heinrich Harburg. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be the next Eric Crouch, so nobody get up in arms, but I will say that I do think he kind of got buried in this program, or what was a mess of a program before, Matt Rule. And I do think it says a lot that he's, stayed this long. So, I've seen him do some runs and some videos, and he appears to be impressing with his red zone efficiency. So I would be very excited to see him kind of solidify that number two, um, slot or number two position, because I don't think it's going to be too much of a stretch to say that he'll probably be be a little bit better than Shubba Purdy was last year. Although you never know around here.
Well, I do think it's interesting because I do want to see Chuba Purdy play well on Saturday because if Casey Thompson leaves, then he's the only like veteran. I mean, veteran in terms of somebody who's actually started and played college football that would be, kind of behind, Jeff Sims. So I would like to see all those guys take a step forward. Torres, I'm guessing we'll probably see him a little bit too. I'm thinking we'll see, those four quarterbacks. Obviously, Smothers and Thompson, haven't been working out in the spring, haven't been playing. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but that's always the thing that I'm interested to watch the most is the quarterbacks, especially when you have a competition. And we actually at this point we don't really even know what kind of game that Matt Rule is going to have. He said it's going to be live. I hope that it's split. I hope that they kind of split them into teams and just play like a 4-quarter game and let it go from there. Ohio State did. They had their offense and defenses kind of set up, and they had a weird. I don't really care about the scoring system. I just like that format of splitting it up into teams and just evening them up and just letting guys compete against each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good test to see, you know, what this team will be able to do in sort of a team setting. I know the spring game a lot of times is more for the fans, but it does give us an idea of, who could potentially be, a key part of next season. I mean, Anthony Grant last year had a great spring game, and he ended up being, a big part of this offense. So there is something to learn from these spring games, and there are things that you can kind of take away from them. And, I'm just hoping that, we see some people kind of break out and some people kind of play well. And most importantly, I'm hoping we don't see any injuries whatsoever, because it seems like we've kind of had a injury-free spring ball in comparison to past years. I remember past years, it seemed like we had tons of injuries all over the place. This year, I'm not really sensing that.
So, what are some things that you're kind of watching for outside of the quarterback play?
The tight end position, I think, as much as, they want to run the football and be physical, I think, you know, what will the tight end room look like? Because with Thomas Fidone and, Gilbert at the position, you have two big bodies that can be your safety valve as a quarterback. And, I think the tight end position is important. We've seen it kind of develop over the past couple seasons with Austin Allen and Travis Vokalek. And we started to see a little bit more of the utilization of the tight end position. And I'd love to see that continue. And then, I think also I just want to see the wide receivers, because I know we've said we have a lot of depth. It's one thing to have a lot of depth. It's another thing to have productive depth. And, I think the wide receiver position will be one that I'm watching as well. Because if all of these athletes can sort of kind of get a good start and perform like we think and hope they can, then I'd say we're in for a fun season.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely want to see what, Xavier Betts can do.
Yeah.
Billy Kemp, Thomas Fidone. I'm not sure if Thomas Fidone is going to be a full go in this game or not. So I'm kind of interested to, in that. But he's one guy I really want to see because I think that he has to have a big season for Nebraska. And then on the defensive line, I'm going to be watching the pass rush. That's been one of my concerns, in this spring is not having enough pass rushers. So I want to see what that pressure looks like. And then obviously just to look at the offensive line and see where, look at how guys like Bryce Benhart look and, Ben Scott, who we haven't really seen, and just some of these new guys and see how that kind of, um, you know, plays out up front. But yeah, the trench play I think is going to be something that I'm going to be watching just because there are kind of a lot of new pieces on both sides, and it's a new scheme on the defensive side of the ball too with Tony White.
Because truthfully, we saw the offensive line perform not so well last year in the spring game, and it kind of carried over into last season. So how they play into on Saturday will not necessarily tell the whole story, but I think it will tell quite a bit of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and I'm excited to see the kind of the play calling and the offense. I mean, you can go look at obviously and see what Marcus Satterfield did at South Carolina, but I think this is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, it's going to have kind of the Matt Rule feel to it. It sounds like a lot of running the football, and I am excited to see different running backs, Gabe Irvin and AJ Allen, um, Anthony Grant, Ramir Johnson. I feel like the running back room is very underrated. I think that might be the strength of this offense. Actually, is the running back room. I do like the receive. I do like all the skill positions though. Wide receiver. I think tight end. They've got some good guys. Quarterback. I do want to see the cornerback position. That's one spot. I think that Nebraska could look to add in the transfer portal. If I was to say, like three positions where they could use help, I would say offensive line, defensive line,
Mhm.
and cornerback. Those are
Yep.
my three biggest needs in the transfer portal.
I agree, and it's interesting you mentioned Ramir Johnson because Mark Whipple, before the first game, kind of highlighted Johnson as somebody that would be a big feature of this offense, and yada yada yada. Mark Whipple hyped him up, and then we didn't see much of him. So, truthfully, the biggest play I remember of Ramir Johnson last season was dropping the touchdown against Illinois. So, I mean, I'm hoping he can get finally kind of get some playing time and I think the fact that he didn't go anywhere, meaning the transfer portal, is kind of telling as well.
Yeah, that was weird. I could never figure that out why they'd
Remember how
ever.
they were like, "Oh, Ramir's going to be a big part of this offense," and
Mhm.
da 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 da, and then we never saw him. We never saw him until toward the end of the season.
Yeah, they even talked about it, compared him to like Brian Westbrook of the
Yeah.
Eagles.
I'm
Whipple
like,
had done
okay.
that, and I don't understand. Yeah, because even when Ramir ran last year, he dropped the pass, but he ran the ball pretty
Yeah,
well.
he
So
did.
that was really confusing to me. I still think, yeah, his pass catching ability was way underutilized last season. I don't get it, but hopefully this staff will be able to take advantage of that.
I think a lot of that
Um,
was Mark Whipple, honestly, though. Like Mark Whipple wanted to go with Chuba, and he didn't want to go with anybody else, and he was just very set in his ways overall offensively. And I think his personnel was his personnel, and everybody else had to suffer.
yeah, it just wasn't a good fit.
No.
It was a bad hire, and we can go back and debate
Yeah.
that,
Nah.
but
Turning the
it is.
page.
Yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I'm excited to see all these get different pieces and how they kind of mold together offensively. But mostly, I'm going to be really locked into Jeff Sims because I haven't seen him play, at least for Nebraska, and I feel like that's the position where things really need to, be better. Not that Casey Thompson was bad last year, but he wasn't healthy for part of the year either, and that's another issue with Casey Thompson is throughout his career. I mean, he's just battled to stay healthy, which availability is one of the best abilities there is. So, and Jeff Sims needs to prove that too.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I kind of agree with that, but on the same time, our line was terrible last year, and it all goes back to the line. If the line can, actually pass protect and play like an offensive line, then I have hope. If they play like they did last year, then we can put Patrick Mahomes back there, and he wouldn't be able to do a whole lot, and he would be running for his life as well. So I think it all goes back to the offensive line because although Casey, did play inconsistently in stretches, and he was kind of up and down at some points, he just got the bag beat out of him every single game. I remember I think it was the Rutgers game where like he was playing with broken ribs and a broken hand. So I think it all goes back to the line because I think as much as we want Sims to succeed, we want Thompson to succeed, but we can have the best quarterback, but if the line doesn't play well, then that's doing us no favors whatsoever.
Very true. It'll be interesting to see what the offensive line looks like, especially, the tackle positions. I don't think, Teddy Brajak is going to play out there at the left side. Sorry, I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation. Need to learn how to
I
pronounce
think he did
that.
it right. I think he did it right,
Um,
Prashaka, yeah.
Maybe, but anyways, I don't believe he's going to play. I'm not sure on that aspect of it. I think he's been off and on a little bit with the green jersey or whatever. So we'll see about that. I'll be interested to see who plays for him if he's not starting at left tackle. But yeah, I definitely want to see how those guys hopefully have taken a step forward, and maybe we can all see what Matt Rule has seen in this offensive line because I didn't see it last year.
I'll just put it this way, if they take a step backwards on Saturday, then, we might be in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Speaking of Saturday, I think it's going to be another, kind of big recruiting weekend for Nebraska. I think there's 9 visitors set up for right now. I'm sure that list will grow in the next couple of days. Brandon Baker is highlighting that. He's the number one offensive tackle, according to On Three. He'll be back, for another unofficial visit, which is a nice turnaround. I mean, he was just there in March, on March 25th. So to get him back less than a month later for the spring game, I think is a really big deal.
Yeah,
Carter Nelson is another guy that's going to be on that list. Willis McGahee, the fourth, I think is what he goes by. Willis McGahee's kid, basically. Um,
makes me feel old.
yeah, I
Feel
know.
very old.
But so, I mean, I think that's a good sign getting those guys back. And, another last night, a top 5 Gatelin Bear, the speedster,
Yeah.
he just ran the 100-meter dash in 10:18. I mean, that's
Wow.
freaking
Wow.
unbelievable out of Idaho. So, I mean, you look at his
Yeah.
top 5: Nebraska, Michigan, TCU, Boise State, Oregon. So, I don't know. To me, that seems like a very winnable recruitment for Nebraska.
I'm worried about Michigan now. What do you think from a Michigan perspective? Just quickly, how do you think that they're recruiting him, and how they and how do they value him?
I do think that Michigan's probably the biggest threat just because they've gone to Idaho and they got Colston Loveland a couple of
Mhm.
years ago. They recruited actually in 2023, they recruited one of the best players there, Kenyon Sadiq. He actually went to Oregon. So I think there is part of that, but also, with Michigan, they just haven't thrown the football a lot. So I mean, I don't know. They haven't really landed a top 100 receiver in a few years.
That's
So
true.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to play into it, but the other school that obviously worries me is Oregon. They're always a big player out west, especially for some of those kids like Idaho and Washington. I mean, they usually scoop those guys up. Like that guy that Michigan missed on, who was the top player in Idaho last year, went to Oregon. So those are probably. I mean, I shouldn't discount Boise State and TCU, but I kind of am. I don't know. I just don't see that really. But maybe Gatelin Bear really likes the TCU spread type of offense, and throws the ball around a little bit. But I feel like Nebraska's got a legit shot though. Michigan does seem a little far away, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think he is taking another visit there. So I don't know. I feel like Nebraska and Michigan both are kind of offering similar type of things. Michigan's just winning right now, but Nebraska really seemed to make an impression on Galen Bear.
Yeah, he's always spoke highly of Nebraska in all the interviews I've read, and he would be a great get. That speed, you can see it in his high school, highlights, and he would just be perfect in terms of, because Matt Rule has built this wide receiver room on speed. There's speed everywhere, and he would just be another great get, another good pass catcher, and another solid addition to the 2024 class. I mean, you talk about 2 weeks ago, we were kind of freaking out that basketball and football were a little bit slow on their recruiting trail, and lo and behold, basketball had a huge week. Football picked up Ashton Murphy, so I mean, you never know. And so yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to see where Bears recruitment goes, and I do feel confident that Nebraska is one of the top schools in his recruitment, and I really hope we land him because that would just be more additional depth to the starting wide receiver room, and not just depth, but I believe a player that can play right away.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely could play right away, and it would mitigate. If Nebraska was able to get Gatelin Bear, then obviously if you missed on Davon Hall or one of those guys, it wouldn't make as big of a difference. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's he said he's going to be coming back for an official visit. I think Nathaniel Frazier said he was going to come back for an official visit. So even if he doesn't make the spring game, I still think he's going to come back for an official visit to Nebraska in June. Jacob Smith, who was just on campus, said he will put Nebraska in his top 5, and
Yeah.
he's also going to take an official visit. And this is a guy that's he's ranked in the 200s, but if you look at the On Three rankings, he's 29th overall in their rankings. So one recruiting service basically views him as a 5-star. I think Notre Dame's the favorite, but
What
look,
about
you
his
get it.
brother, Jared?
His brother, I don't think Nebraska's in as good of a spot with. It doesn't
Okay.
sound like. I don't know. It's weird how that kind of works out, but I just know that he and his mom came this weekend, and his mom
Yeah,
hasn't. He's been to like 30 campuses, and his mom's only been with him a few times. So I thought that was moms are a big deal in recruiting. I mean, people
they
want to
are.
overlook it, but coaches have to sell the mom, especially if you're taking a kid from California to Nebraska. I mean, that's a big leap. And so, like, to get a kid like that, you want to get him on campus 3 times. So you've already got Baker now on campus twice. You get him back in June, and you might be able to win this recruitment.
If you win the mom on a college recruitment, even if you're not a football player, then I think you're good to go. Moms have a lot to say in college recruitments, and of course they want to protect their babies and they want to make sure they're good away from home. So if a mom comes to a recruiting visit or a college visit in general, then that is definitely a good sign.
Yeah, it definitely is. So I thought that was a nice, you know, bit of news there for Nebraska. And then Isaiah McMorris, we should mention, was there on
Yep.
Saturday for the scrimmage, which I thought was a big deal.
Yeah.
We'll see if he comes back. I would like to see some in-state guys come back this weekend. I know we've got Carter Nelson, but Caleb Benning, some of those guys that in-state, I would like to see Nebraska generate some more momentum. And Benning, I feel like that should be, they need to get
Yeah.
that kid committed.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say the same thing. I feel like out of all the names you mentioned, Nelson, McMorris. I think Benning is actually the best, the one that has the best chance to come to Nebraska. But I think it's interesting that McMorris was there on Saturday just because, it seems like things have been trending not in Nebraska's favor at the moment with him. So, maybe that's a good sign. And I know he's visited campus back in March, at the beginning of March, and maybe we have a shot. Who knows? But you know, I think um, I think for me, Frazier and Baker are the two big recruits that I'm kind of zeroing in on. What are your kind of key targets for you that you want to see Nebraska land?
I mean, I'd say those two guys, and then Gatelin Bear obviously is one of
Yeah,
my favorites in this
yeah,
entire class, and then Carter Nelson. I definitely, those four guys. I know Carter Nelson's going to be tough to get, but I think it's a good sign he's coming back this weekend, and I just really love his ability. I mean, I think he's eventually is a guy that has a chance to be taken like day one or day two of the draft. I mean, this is a 8-man prospect, and I know that some people freak out about that, but I just think that he's a guy that. And yeah, I mean, maybe that's why you go to Alabama or Georgia and you get it. But I think Nebraska has that same type of, NFL, coaching staff. Like, I'm not saying that Matt Rule's Nick Saban or anything, but if you're a big time player, I mean, Matt Rule's got guys to the NFL, so he knows how to get dudes to the league. So I think that is going to help Nebraska. But I just really love what Carter Nelson can bring. And
yeah.
I'm just really, as much as I've said this before, I mean, as much as I want Dylan Raiola, I've said I think Carter Nelson is right there in terms of importance.
And like I said last week, if you get the playmakers in your offense, you can have a quarterback that's not maybe necessarily Dylan Raiola caliber, but can still, throw the football and play at a high level. Like if you put Harburg, for example, in an offense with Carter Nelson and Bear and guys like that, I think he would have a really good chance to succeed.
Yeah, and we've seen Alabama. I mean, Georgia's done that. Stetson Bennett's not getting drafted. You know what I mean? And he was a former walk on, and they just dominated people. So I mean, if
Yeah,
you have a quarterback that, I mean, really, if you can be accurate, and being accurate in
AJ
college, and
McCarron.
yeah, exactly. Yep. Greg McElroy,
Yep.
like the list goes on. I mean, even if you want to look at Michigan the last 2 years, I mean, JJ McCarthy made some plays near the end of the year, but most of the year he was a game manager. It was handing the ball off 30 times,
Yeah.
and it was like make a few third down plays, run for a few first downs, and don't turn the ball over. I mean, that's really what you got to do.
I don't know. The one that really sticks out to me, Michigan wise, is Shea Patterson because he was really good in college and then just absolutely sucked outside of college. So, it does work. It does happen.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get. I mean, you have to get those system. I'm not the system type of quarterback. The game. I mean, like Cade McNamara will hate it. That's why he wants to go to Iowa to not be a game manager. But that's why Iowa got you, was so you don't screw it up. Like, so you can just get first downs. And I mean, because there are, if you have a really good defense like a Michigan or Iowa, man, if you can just get into the 20s, like you're
Yeah.
going to win. And I don't think Nebraska's defense is going to be that good, but I feel like with their running game and with Sims, if Jeff Sims can, or whoever is playing quarterback this year, can just take care of the football, I feel like Nebraska is going to be in a good spot.
Yeah. I feel like, and I've said, I think 9-3 could potentially be realistic, but, I think the first two games, Minnesota and then Colorado, are going to be really good tests, and boy, do I want to be Colorado. Every single day, I just see more Colorado stuff all over my timeline. I got Buffalo fans in my mentions. I got, where to find me, says Deion Sanders, but he's not even in their recruiting video. Like, I don't know. I just like the way, and that's the other thing too. I like the way, and I've said this before, but it's worth repeating again. Matt Rule doesn't do stuff for the cameras. He's not very showy. He just goes out and works hard, and he has a little fun too at the WrestleMania on Friday. He
That was
threw the bones,
badass.
and that
The
was
bones
awesome. Yeah,
was just like it's funny because like it just seemed like he was just there hanging out, you know,
yeah,
and then they saw him and it became a thing. But like I think he just I love that he's just there watching pro wrestling and yeah, he's a genuine guy and I think that that really comes across
yeah.
and he said something the other day like, you know, I've had a lot of jobs and I want this to be my last one and I hope that that's I hope he's coaching here like 15 years down the road and I think that he would be okay with that. I think, you know, he sought out the NFL, he got his taste of it and realized that that life is a tough life. And I think that, you know, he sees what some of these other coaches have done. And if you can be a successful college football coach, man, you can have quite the life, you know?
I mean, just look at Saban. He kind
Yeah.
of didn't do so hot with the Dolphins. He didn't do terribly with the Dolphins, but he didn't do so hot with the Dolphins. He said, "You know what? I'll go back to Alabama," and I think it's worked out all right for
Yeah. I think this is like his 17th season. I thought
him.
just a crap ton of championships. Yeah. It's worked out
tons of
okay.
tons of NFLers. Just
Boosters buying your house for you, you know, no big deal.
And I watched the video one time of a Nick Saban recruiting pitch, and
Yeah.
they pulled up to the house. They showed the big house overlooking the lake. Then they opened the door. There was this gigantic trophy case about this big, just full of rings and like trophies and banners. I'm like, damn, if I was a Alabama recruit, I'd be sold right then and there. He wouldn't even have to say a word.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he goes over that whole yeah, I remember that video and then he was talking to the kid about all the programs and stuff that they have. And yeah, it would be hard to say no to that. I mean, it really would, but that's why I did but kids are they are really impressed with Nebraska's facility. So I do think in terms of and I guess I should say this too. I forgot to mention it, but Tom Lemming, you know, is a big recruiting reporter. I don't know if you saw this.
I did. I
He
did.
doesn't work for any of the big sites anymore, but he's still a big name and he went out and one of the name of school he said was training up the most was Nebraska. So I think that that's notable. I'm not, you know, I do think it's going to take a bit of time for them to win more of these high
Yeah.
level recruitments once, but just to get the name in there is a big deal. And I think that when more success happens on the field, which I do think is inevitable with Matt Rule, I think that those top 100 recruiting victories will start to happen a little bit more. I'm not saying Nebraska's ever going to recruit like Alabama or Ohio State, but every once in a while, I think, you know, you'll see him get a kid like a Gatelin Bear or, you know, maybe a Dylan Rayola or whatever.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? You got Ed Foley, who's been to basically every high school in Nebraska. You have Matt Rule, who's going down to Texas one day and then throwing the bones on WrestleMania the next day. I mean, these guys don't sleep. They want to work hard, they want to recruit, and they want to make the program better. And I don't think it's a facade. I think it's extremely genuine, and it comes across as such.
Yeah, it really does, and we'll see, you know, what that looks like going forward for this class. But I feel good about you know where things stand. Obviously, I would like some more commitments and stuff, but you know, I trust the coaching staff eventually, and I do think that you know Matt Rule has definitely done a very good job on the recruiting trail for Nebraska. I think people that were underselling him on the recruiting trail, I think you know they've been proven wrong, I guess, so far because, you know, top 25 class and another class that's off to a solid start. It could be better, but, you know, still a long way to go. And I think one thing that we've learned about Matt Rule is these guys know how to close when they really need to. I mean, they could sense the negative momentum and boom, they get Ashton Murphy. And then, you know, Matt Rule talked about how there was the negative narrative about, you know, Garrett McGuire and the receivers coach. Well, guess what? He's got Isaiah McMorris there for a scrimmage and he had you know, Garcia Castaneda and Fleeks and, you know, some of the other guys out there talking about, yeah, Garrett McGuire is a great coach, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that that was done by accident. That was all very planned. And you got Isaiah McMorris back on campus. And I think you're right back in that recruitment.
No, and I think he's a guy that we're gonna lose in the future for another like big time level job. I don't think we're gonna have him for very long, and that would be a great referendum on the program. But I really do feel excited with the staff, and I think also too coming from the Carolina Panthers and kind of just taking the year off to figure things out, kind of re-energized Matt Rule and made him realize that this is what he wants to do at the college level. So I think that helped as well.
Yeah, it definitely did, and hopefully we will be able to keep Coach Rule around here for a while. But yeah, this weekend will be fun to get a first kind of glimpse of spring game and kind of the staff and everything. But I wanted to shift before we close out today. Let's talk some hoops, and was a big recruiting win, kind of a surprise on was it Friday, Thursday?
Yeah, a Friday, I wasn't prepared for it. I
Right.
was ready to
Yeah.
crack open a beer, and the next thing I know, I see a commitment, so I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Nick Janowski. I hopefully
I think
I
so. I think
okay.
so.
But anyways, then yeah, Danny wrote about this at on HuskerBigRed.com, and I haven't had a chance to write about it, but I really love this commitment for Nebraska. 6'3", 200-pound shooting guard. I mean, this kid can really shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Ranked 95th in the country in the composite, number 2 in Wisconsin. And the reason I like this commitment is because, like you and I were messaging off air. I mean, this is a guy that could eventually play in the league, but he's going to be a 2 or 3 year, Big Ten player. Maybe somebody that can contribute off the bench his first year, and then probably be a 2 or 3 year starter. So that's like 50 to 125 is exactly where Nebraska should be recruiting in terms of the rankings. And this is a huge win for Fred Hoiberg.
Absolutely, and Janowski does a good job of creating shots, whether it's driving to the rim, and getting contact, or just shooting from the corner. He can shoot the basketball. He does a good job of finding his shots and getting shots, and I think it's an important part of what this program is all about. And I do think, the type of player in terms of needing to develop for 3 years is good for the program as well. Like you said, I mean, we've had a lot of not one and dones, but maybe like 2 seasons and done, or somebody's left for the draft, or somebody's entered the portal. We need stability within the program. We have some kids like that already. And now we just need to keep building on it. But this was a really, really solid addition. I mean, taking Janowski out of Wisconsin and not having him commit to the Badgers is always really, really good.
And it's funny. So he's the fourth highest commitment all time in the 24/7 sports rankings for Nebraska. And Fred Hoiberg now has 4 of the top 6 all time. And he's got, Ramil Lloyd, who was in 2022. Hopefully will make an impact, next year. Wilhelm Breidenbach and Bryce McGowan. So, I mean, all 3 big time recruits there, but not, outside of McGowan's not a ton of production so far. But still, I still think it's trending in the right direction, and I really, I really like this recruitment. And there's some interesting transfer portal things, going on too. Latrell Wrightsell was
Mm.
visiting this weekend. Javian McCollum, the Siena point guard. So I feel like there's going to be some movement with one of those 2 guys here pretty quickly. I think that I don't know which one Nebraska wants more. I don't know if they view Wrightsell more favorably than the other, but I feel like one of those 2 guys is going to be committed this week, and then hopefully Hunter Salas will be committed next weekend. He's going to visit Wake Forest. I mean, it sounds like a Wake Forest Nebraska battle right now, and I just feel like the way Nebraska's trending up, man. I mean, I really think if they get Hunter Salas and some of these guys, they got a good chance to be, an NIT or an NCAA tournament team. And I just feel like he would have a perfect role here.
Yeah.
Plus with what Fred Hoiberg, can and has done. Look at Iowa State, all the guys he got to the pros, and look at here. I mean, yeah, he hasn't had anybody drafted outside of McGowan's, but I mean, he definitely helped the stock of Derek Walker and Sam Griesel and Keisei Tominaga. So I feel like Nebraska just has a lot to sell right now to Hunter Salas.
But my one big concern is that you have all these athletes like Breidenbach and now Janowski and all these big level recruits, but the winning hasn't been there aside from this year. Aside from this year, the winning hasn't been there. So can he find a formula next season that will allow him to win some more games? That's my thing. He's always been able to recruit well. It's just been the execution and the winning part of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's taken longer, I think, than people wanted, obviously, but I do think that he's found kind of the sweet spot, for recruiting. I feel like he's got a good kid in Eli Rice in
Mm.
2023 and another good one now. And I do really like this roster heading into next season. They need a point guard and another defensive stopper, but I mean that's literally exactly what they need. So if they get Wrightsell or McCollum and Salas, like that is the ideal transfer portal
Yeah.
haul. And I definitely think if that happens, this team is playing postseason basketball next year.
No, I definitely agree. This is shaping up to be one of the most talented rosters I think that he's ever had. And, I think a lot of it, like last year, I thought a lot of them played, good team basketball, and that's the reason why they succeeded. It wasn't necessarily a ton of talent, but it was good team basketball. I think this year's team, if all goes according to plan, will probably be the most talented he's ever had.
Yeah, and I mean, you've brought it up a bunch too, but there's more with the coaching staff and some of the assistant hirings. They've focused more on defense, and that was something that John Beeline, he struggled at Michigan even before he kind of got him back to the national championship, and he basically brought in a defensive coordinator, I think in 2015 or six, and it totally flipped around. That's basically what ignited a bunch of Sweet 16 runs for Michigan, was that their offense was elite and then their defense matched it too. So I think Fred has always been a great offensive coach. I think his teams are always going to play well offensively. If they can continue to play well defensively, that's going to be the key going forward. And I think he gets that now. And I feel really, really good about where Nebraska basketball is, I have to say.
Yeah, man, we saw kind of the defensive blueprint with Adam Howard, for example, last year. I thought they played much, much better defense, and
Mm-hmm.
if they can just continue that, I think they'll be in good shape. And this is a big year for the program coming up, and I think if all goes according to plan, we could potentially see postseason play. I'm not getting my hopes up, but I mean, this is a roster that I think can compete not only in the Big Ten, but in March as well.
Yep, 100% agree. So let's start wrapping things up. I did want to mention before we go here that the baseball team got a big sweep of Northwestern, and the Huskers are now sitting in first place in the Big Ten with the 7-2 record. So that's a great place to be. Their non-conference start, wasn't great. So I mean, I don't know where they're sitting in terms of like at large biz and stuff, but it might be time to start paying attention to the old baseball bracket projections and stuff like that. But if you win the Big Ten, you're probably going to make it anyway. So good start for the Huskers, but a long way to go. But they're hitting the hell out of the ball and getting some pretty good pitching too. So it's looking good.
Bats are not a problem this year at all. I mean, the pitching struggled in the beginning, but now it's sort of leveled off. So they do have a good lineup, and I'm hoping they can continue to play at a high level because the way the season started, it didn't look so great, but now it looks like they found their groove.
Yeah, they have. It's a fun team to watch, scoring a lot of runs.
Oh
So,
yeah.
make sure you check out that, and make sure you guys are checking out HuskerBigRed.com for all of our updates. Transfer portal, recruiting, spring game stuff. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our videos or podcasts in the future. Hit the like. Get into the comments section. Let us know what you think about recruiting, the transfer portal, Matt Rule, or anything else that has to do with the Cornhuskers. So, as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.